two,
two,
one.
one.
Hey!
Hey!
Welcome everybody to VGM Together. We're so excited to be kicking off the inaugural VGM Together's panels track. My name is EDER BASTOS. This is JAREL Jones right below me. We're going to be talking to you today about the music of Final Fantasy XIV. And our panel is called Melodies, Reborn. You can see on the screen all our different handles across the servers of Final Fantasy XIV. If you play, you probably recognize the icons. You can also find us on Twitter. We got a lot of stuff to talk about today, so we got to get going. In rehearsal, we hit 58 minutes, and we have 60, so it's gonna be a lightning panel. What we're gonna be talking to you about today is we're gonna introduce you to some of the themes and motifs that are used in Final Fantasy XIV. Unfortunately, it's not gonna be a list or discussion of Final Fantasy XIV bops. There's too many. It is what it is. We think that 14's music is great for a lot of reasons, and we really hope that someone's going to be watching this and get kick-started into doing some academic research into it. So we're going to hopefully try to get a little bit of that as well. Again, we just have 45 minutes, so we can't really dive deep into too much. We really want to have some time left over for questions at the end. So we're going to talk a little bit about who this panel is for. Maybe you've never heard of Final Fantasy XIV, or maybe you have and you've heard the sales pitch, but you've never really tried it. Maybe this will explain it a little bit for you. Maybe you're a musician and a lot of your fan base maybe is interested in 14 music and you just never got it. Hopefully this will be a starting point for you. If you're a musicologist looking for a way to, this is 10 years of music. There's just too much to just get started, right? Hopefully we can offer a little bit of that for you as well.
Yeah, hopefully for the musicologists who I'd notice right now are in panels chat, wink, wink, this may be interesting.
Lastly, if you love spoilers for some reason, we got them. We got a little widget down at the bottom left corner that we're going to put on any slides that have spoilers. We'll try to also call them out before we say them. But if you really want to be safe, if you see that and you aren't at that patch in the main story quest yet, just mute the panel and wait till the next slide, and you'll be safe. Who this panel is not for. If you're playing the game right now, be careful of spoilers. It is what it is. If you're just looking to have us tell you what songs are the best, we'll get to some of those, but it's like I said, it's that's not for you. This isn't for you. And if there's any chance at all that you would ever try this game, please close this right now and go do it. It's one of the best games of the last 20 years, and there's no honest way to describe Final Fantasy XIV that doesn't make you sound like a cultist. So we really hope that, if nothing else, this piques your interest. So we're going to get right into it. We're going to talk about some of the general motifs that are used throughout the 10-year history of the game's soundtracks. Again, the 10 years is a long time, so just some of these themes are going to be in dozens and dozens of tracks. We're going to kind of pick one or two to maybe dissect. Before we do that, let's talk about what a motif is in case you just don't know what the term is. It's a short musical phrase with special importance. Usually in media, these type of things represent a character, a place, idea, a thing, etc. They're often used to reinforce what you're seeing on the screen. Think Luke's theme in Star Wars, right? Whenever Luke's on screen, you hear it, right? What's interesting in this particular case is that 14 is MMO, right? And one of the great things about 14 is that it doesn't do a lot of that really predatory stuff to keep you playing, but they still want to keep you playing, right? That's how they make money. And I think that the way that 14 keeps people playing is much more wholesome. Narrative, character connections, social connections with other players, musical motifs, see what I'm and like I said, motifs being such an intimately emotional thing, they keep you coming back. It is what it is. So we're going to start right off talking about the Final Fantasy Prelude. Jarel, go ahead, take it away.
Yeah, so the Prelude, literally, if you've played any Final Fantasy game at any point in your life, you should be familiar with this set of notes. This song tends to be associated with the Warrior of Light in any Final Fantasy game, also associated with the good guys in general, and also associated with crystals, which this game has a lot of, just like most other Final Fantasy. Basically, anytime you hear the Prelude in Final Fantasy XIV, it is the game's statement of intent that, hey, despite being an MMO, this is Final Fantasy. Again, get hype. So we will play an example of that, I believe.
We will, but it's in another window.
So,
Oh, come on. Slides. So yeah, I mean, that's just the title screen music. Quick note, in case you're wondering, we have to stay in the clear with Square Enix Legal. We have to show footage of the game whenever we're actually playing music from it. So that's get ready to see a lot of our various characters doing dances. Go ahead.
All right, so next up, we're going to talk a little bit about the Warrior of Light motif. So interestingly enough, this motif exists in the game. It exists as a song created by a world-renowned composer. You even craft music boxes playing the song as a commission for an older couple's anniversary gifts to each other in the level 60 Goldsmith quest, which is wild. But out of the game, in a non-diegetic sense, this song is basically the theme song of you, the player character. This song is tied to the blessing of the god of light, Hydaelyn, and you hear it starting in major dungeons that end the original Realm Reborn story, and many, many more times over the course of the game. Over time, it even starts replacing the prelude, actually, in terms of usage. You'll basically always hear a variation of the prelude in every expansion's title screen. But the Warrior of Light's motif is what more often plays in big moments. So let's go ahead and listen to a few examples of that.
So that's the Maker's Ruin. Yeah, and Shadowbringers, they really lean into that theme. Whenever there's feels happening involving you in particular, that tends to come up. So let's talk about Garlemald. So it's a Final Fantasy game, so they're legally required to have an evil empire be the bad guys, right? It's just, I don't make the rules. I just call them as I see them. Garlemald is that evil empire in this game, and they have a very distinct theme. You'll notice in the sheet music that I've included, I try to keep it always in C major or A minor. There's no way to get rid of the accidentals in this one. It's very chromatic and very imposing too. What's interesting is that until very recent content, it almost always is just used verbatim. It's just the Empire's theme. Very rarely does it get used without being an exact quote. Again, to avoid spoiling too much, that's changed recently. But we're going to hear a couple of versions of the Imperial theme. So here's Imperial Will. And here's the beep strikes again. Stalks again. Sorry. Cool. Go ahead, Joe.
All right, on to the Ascians. Lord, the Ascians. So the Ascians are the true big bads of the game. Although despite the dark cloaks and the mystery, or maybe because of it, the game makes no attempt to even hide the fact that they're running the show. So you will see them quite a bit as you play the game. As befits a mysterious group with questionable motives, their musical motif has a more complex time signature compared to most other songs in the game. But similar to the Imperial Garlemald theme you just heard, despite the major presence of the Ascians throughout the game, their motif is rarely ever reused with variations elsewhere. You almost always only hear it in its original form. Like the Garlemald theme we just heard, there is one very recent exception, which we will go ahead and play both of those now.
So this is Without Shadow. And by the way, when we say Before Meteor, that's the name of the soundtrack that represents Final Fantasy XIV Before A Realm Reborn. I will be calling out the names of the albums so you can find them on Spotify. So this is Shadows Withal.
I know we did say earlier that we wouldn't have a list of bops, but there's gonna be some bops in this panel.
Yeah, it's hard to even play that one without calling out just like stylistic diversity that they go through in this game is just off the charts.
All right, so next we're going to talk a little bit about fates. Fates are full active time events because every single Final Fantasy needs a ridiculous acronym somewhere. Fates are basically a combat system for world battles, where when you're walking around the MMO in a zone and you see a location where stuff is going on and a fate is up and running, you can just hop in and start fighting. And anybody on your server who happens to be in the same area can just join you in real time, so you can just go at it. For the fates that involve fighting a single large enemy rather than a bunch of small ones, this motif plays to signify the fact that you are in a high energy combat situation. So similar to the Chocobo theme song, it's a motif for a gameplay system rather than a location. You will often hear variations on this motif anytime you're doing any type of content that can involve a lot of combat. So for example, PvP, treasure map dungeons, or the Eureka Island in the Stormblood expansion, where basically every second you spend in that island can be exceptionally dangerous. For all of those, you will tend to hear some variation on this fate motif. We'll listen to a couple of those now.
Yeah. So here's Hard to Miss,
which is the original theme, of course. Also, enjoy my character on Mateus just being really bad at that fight right there.
And here's Danger Tech.
Oh, God.
I really should have closed for this.
Twitch chat talking about the Atma farming. Please don't give me PTSD while we're in the middle of doing this panel.
All right. Let me go back to the right window. Okay, cool. So that's just a sampling of some of the stuff that just you hear all the time, right? Again, we just got to scratch the surface. The next thing we want to talk about is some of the things that are more specific to each of the expansions for the game. And for those who haven't played 14, the different expansions are roughly analogous to like seasons of a television show. You have to play them in order. They all tell a big cohesive narrative in chunks, right? So we're going to start right off by talking about A Realm Reborn's main theme, which is answers.
So, as a reminder, I think we talked about this, or we talked partially about the materials license usage, how we have to have video on screen. But another thing about these songs is that there are a couple of songs here and there where we cannot actually play the music for you, because specifically the tracks that were composed by Nobuo Uematsu and sung by Susan Calloway are under a separate license. That license policy does not allow these songs to ever be played or streamed outside the context of the game. So we can't let you listen to any of these tracks, these next couple. But we can certainly talk about them a little bit. So first up is Answers. This song is all about the calamity that ruined AOZ and saved 14. We mentioned this a little bit earlier, but for those who don't remember, when 14 originally came out, it was pretty atrocious in quality. So a few years later, they relaunched the game with a massive 2.0 rework that changed just about everything except the plot continuation, which is one seamless loop. And this new game did so much better that the game is still well loved and played regularly today, obviously. So Answers was the song that played during the final cutscene before the 1.0 version of 14 shut down. In that cutscene, Bahamut escaped from a man-made moon he was imprisoned in and literally blew up the world. It was amazing. You should go watch it. The 2.0 version of the game starts 5 years later and deals with much of the repercussions of that event. So the song, along with the 2.0 re-release, are almost like an apology from the developers. Like, hey, we're sorry about 1.0, so we're just going to let Susan Calloway blow out your eardrums with awesomeness. This is our apology.
Now, unfortunately, we can't do that, but here's a couple of songs on the Realm Reborn soundtrack you should definitely go check out if you are interested in hearing the ways in which they took this very simple melody and just turned it up to 11.
Yeah, you will note when you play the game that most of these variations on the melody are used pretty much in any story thread that continues that story of Bahamut, why he escaped, and how people are basically picking up the pieces afterwards. You will often hear this motif.
Very similarly, Heavensward also has a Susan Calloway Slayfest called Dragon Song. Again, we can't play it for you. Very simple melody. You can probably sing it. I could too. I won't. This song represents kind of the emotional impact of the Dragon Song War, which is kind of the big fundamental conceit of or concept of Heavensward, and it motifs based off of Dragon Song often show up in highly emotionally moving cutscenes, and I do mean highly. It's Heavensward is very it's a lot. And what I find really interesting is that one of the places you hear motifs from Dragon Song the most is actually the quest complete jingle. Whenever you finish a quest in Final Fantasy XIV, there's a very triumphant jingle, and in Heavensward, it's pretty much this da 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 da, and
that wasn't the lick, by the way.
It was not. It was very close. It's one note off, right? What I found very interesting is if we could play it for you, you'd be able to hear that it's a quest complete jingle. It's victorious, but it's like a very bittersweet, like, oh, was it really worth it? Was any of this worth it? Is there really a point to this war? Which is kind of the fundamental message of Heavensward, right? If you're interested in this, definitely go check out Dragon Song, and for another take on it, check out Contention, both off of the Heavensward soundtrack.
All right, and now we'll talk a little bit about the Heavensward combat theme, which, hey, we actually will be able to play this for you. So this theme represents the conflict side of the Dragon Song lore in comparison to the previous theme we just talked about. You tend to hear this prominently in the boss battle themes in Dungeons and Heavensward. You hear it as part of the main theme for the final dungeon of Heavensward. But also, interestingly, you hear it in the town themes of that expansion. So the themes are rearranged to be calmer when you hear them in the towns. But the choice of reusing this motif, I feel, still drives home the fact that even these towns on the edge of the war, these supposed safe zones, they didn't escape the effects of the war wholesale. There are still people who are in these towns who are still suffering as a result of this 1,000-year war. So let's go ahead and listen to the motif here.
Yeah, we're going to go to Ominous Prognostics, the boss theme. And Shelter, which is the town theme. So yeah, very, very different stylistically, both of those songs. So we're going to talk next about Stormblood, and one of the biggest things you hear all over Stormblood is this motif that represents Alamigo.
Can I just take a moment to notice in chat, folks who talk about how they didn't notice some stuff? It was just like, wow, this is crazy. These motifs are popping up. Here's a secret. One or two of these motifs we didn't notice either until we mutually did the rehearsal for this panel a couple days ago. EDER was doing something for a panel or for a slide that you will talk about later, and I'm just like, are you serious? Is that actually in the game?
Actually, JAREL and I just got out of a dungeon yesterday, at midnight. We're not even talking about this panel, and I was like, wait, JAREL, such and such is that Revolutions? And we got in a big spat about it. It was great. So there's just, it's we're learning about this as we're writing the panel. So yeah, this motif represents kind of it is the national anthem of Garibani, which is the country that Alamigo is the capital of. The motif plays a lot whenever there's a scene that kind of involves the political implications of the Ghanaian occupation. Big old spoiler warning before we go on too much. It also shows up in scenes where there's a staging area for a battle, or you're gearing up to go fight a boss or something like that. We're going to listen to two tracks from this, which we had to cut the others due to time constraints. But there is a large spoiler we could give you about the political implications of Ghanaian occupation involving this motif. When you look at the Spotify playlist I prepared at the end of this presentation, it will have more tracks regarding this motif, so definitely check that out. So we're going to listen to Impact. And this is what plays when you're in the Resistance town. And then Heroes of Stormblood. And you can hear that while the other tune is a little bit more we're from Alamigo, yeah, we're proud. This one's more of a yeah, we're from Alamigo, we're going to go get the thing done because it's not done yet, right? So that's Stormblood. Next we got Shadowbringers.
All right. So we're starting off with Tomorrow and Tomorrow, one of the most gorgeous songs in the game, in my opinion. This motif is what we like to call the Shadowbringers feels theme. You will obviously hear this anytime in Shadowbringers where just feels are just dripping and you're just exposing your emotions all over the place. So this song is in a sort of duality with the main theme of Shadowbringers, which we'll discuss in a moment. A major theme of the Shadowbringers expansion, minor spoilers here for 5.0, is that darkness may not be as bad as you thought, and light may not be as good as you thought. So this motif plays into that by often having an association with darkness, and with minor key variations of this motif often get played in sequences in which the light is overwhelming. So let's play a couple of examples of that.
Yeah, so we'll start off with Tomorrow and Tomorrow itself.
Stand tall.
And here's Pain and Pleasure, which plays in a town where not everything is going so great. You can kind of hear that, like, oh yeah, this is almost right, but it's not. It's a very haunting melody, in my opinion.
Okay, so now we'll talk a little bit about the Shadowbringers main theme, which is the other side of that duality mentioned earlier. So this is sort of the Shadowbringers action theme. It's the opposite side of the coin from Tomorrow and Tomorrow in that this motif is more associated with your battle against the light. So you'll often hear this song in things like high-energy cutscenes and in boss battles during the dungeons in this expansion. All events in which the light is overwhelming and you're specifically actively trying to fight it back. So let's listen to a couple of examples of that.
So here's the Shadowbringers main theme. Get those glow sticks out. Again, we just gotta stick with short snippets here. Here's High Treason. Again, there will be a Spotify playlist at the end of this. However, none of these Shadowbringers songs will be on it because Shadowbringers isn't on Spotify yet. It is available for purchase, I believe, on Amazon. So definitely go check that out. So that's kind of a brief overview of the themes of each of the individual expansions. And as a quick organizational note, we're doing pretty good on time compared to the dress rehearsal. So we'll be able to maybe go a little bit deeper into these than we did in dress, which is great. Because these are we really wanted to do a panel that was mostly this type of stuff, but there's just no way to cover all of it. Couple of things for the audience to keep in mind. If you're averse to spoilers for Stormblood or for Shadowbringers, we'll see you in 20 minutes. This is it's going to get bad because we're going in. So first, we're going to talk about a moment in the game called Tsukuyomi's Pain. Again, if you haven't finished Stormblood, so there's a character called Yotsu. She's the secondary villain of Stormblood. She was abused as a child, and as an adult, she was sold into servitude. And in that servitude, she managed to catch the eye of the Garlean military, became a spy, rose the ranks, and eventually was given the rank of acting viceroy of Doma, Doma being a country that Garlemald has subjugated in the world of Final Fantasy XIV. Very original name. It is what it is. Owing to the troubled nature of her past, Yotsu, kind of her defining characteristic is that she has a strong obsession with pain, both her own pain and channeling that into others. So there's lots of scenes where she's just being very just like heinously inflicting pain on others. Some things happen, some things get devastated. It's not really anybody's intention, and she gets defeated, and somehow ends up developing amnesia. With the villain now being amnesiac, the good guys kind of take her in and try to kind of rehabilitate her, try to give her a new life. And again, some more devastation happens, and she ends up being a boss. You have to fight her directly. And that moment is what we call Tsukuyomi's Pain. It's the trial at the end of 4.3. So again, if you haven't gotten all the way through 4.3, see you later. So here's another one of those songs that we actually can't play for you. Because this one references both the Alameda National Anthem motif, which we've already talked about, and actually Stormblood's vocal Susan Calloway Sleigh Fest, which is called Revolutions. And that's the melody that I have listed second right there in the sheet music. The fact that we kind of have these two very main theme-ish things of Stormblood kind of referred to in the song that plays during the first part of your battle against Yotsuyu, I should say against Tsukuyomi, which is kind of like the big spirit summon form of Yotsuyu. It makes you feel like, oh, well, okay, this is the last boss of Stormblood, and this is the last boss theme of Stormblood, right? Like, you've heard one JRPG last boss theme, you've heard them all, right? And like I said, this is just the first part of Tsukuyomi's Pain. It's a 3-part boss battle, and I think it's just one of the most incredible storytelling moments in any video game ever, for reasons that I hope that you'll kind of get as we talk more about it. But like I said, it's a very straightforward boss theme that we can't play for you. But definitely go check it out. The song's called Night Bloom, and the Susan Calloway bop is called Revolution. So definitely go check those out. They're in the Spotify playlist at the end. So you take a chunk off our hit points, and now we can start playing music for you. So here's a video, and we move to the second part of the boss battle. And the scene very much changes, and it becomes less this military looking base that you're fighting her in, and it's more of a dream sequence. And it's a dream sequence that's populated with memories from Yotsuyu's past. And Yotsuyu stops being this big monster in the middle of the arena that you're fighting and reverts to kind of this scared little girl. And you have to actually protect her from literal manifestations of her abuse. And it's a deeply moving scene that's made possibly even more tear-jerking by the fact that it weaves the motifs from the Yanxia region where you first encounter Yotsu, and which is kind of the land that she has been given dominion over, and the theme of Doma as a country. And those get weaved into the song as well. So we're going to play that for you. First, we're going to play a Father's Pride, which is the theme of Yanxia. And we're going to play Science theme next. So those get mixed into the boss theme, which is called Lunacy. And I'm just getting chills listening to that. It's just so such a deeply bitter version of it. So what I really think is interesting about this is that here's where kind of you drop some of the augmented chords and go back to kind of a major tonality, almost as if to represent, like, yeah, it was Doma that took her in when she had amnesia and showed her all this forgiveness. Like, unquestionably a positive force in her life, regardless of whether she deserves it. I don't know, I just think that's interesting. I might be reading into it too much. So then you defeat all her demons, and the day is saved, right? No, unfortunately not. What happens is that we go into a third phase of the boss battle. The entire arena morphs. You're now in like a forest in presumably Yanxia in the fall, and there's these gorgeous leaves everywhere. And you basically fight Yotsuyu's final form, and it represents her true feelings. In this section, the music leans into the second section of the Yankshire theme, which we'll play for you in a moment, almost as if like the turmoil in her soul has been, for better or worse, resolved, and it didn't come out the way we want. She's not post amnesia Yotsuyu, who has a really kind heart. She's here to take everybody down, at whatever cost. So we're gonna listen to the second half of Father's Pride, the Yankshire theme. And here's Wayward Daughter.
A bop.
It is. And we were talking about how we're figuring this out as we're writing it. So I actually added the names of the songs to the slides this morning. And while I was doing that to this slide, I realized, wait, hold on. The song's called A Wayward Daughter. Does that mean Father's Pride? Is it her father? Is the name of the song being sarcastic? It's wow. Anyway, yeah. I mean, there's one of the reasons that I think that this is such a profound storytelling moment is obviously the kind of like play within a play aspect of it. There's all this musical storytelling and visual storytelling that's happening. Just as, by the way, it's a really tough boss battle. You're just trying to hang on for dear life with 7 of your closest friends, and all this metaphor is being thrown at you. And not even the soundtrack listings was spared an opportunity to tell the story. So that's 14, man. I'm telling you. So let's talk about Shadowbringers a little bit.
All right, here we go. So the thing about this slide, we are going to talk about a trial called Seed of Sacrifice, and I want to point out again that we have major spoilers here. I'm about to talk about I'm basically going to spoil all of 5.3 coming up, which just came out last August. So if you have not played through patch 5.3, and you ever intend on playing this game, and you do not want to be spoiled, please, for the love of Hydaelyn, go do something else and come back in 10 minutes, because this is just going to be very bad for you. So let's get started. So the main villain of the entire Shadowbringers expansion is Emet-Selch. Emet-Selch is one of the 3 Ascians in charge of the entire group of Ascians. There are 13 of them, and there are 3 in charge, and Emet-Selch is one of those 3. The player character helped kill one of those 3 Ascians for good back in Heavensward, sort of. And basically now the others are stepping up to the plate to try and continue the goal of taking out the Warrior of Light and doing things their way. So Emet-Selch is personified as an anti-hero. When you first meet him, he's content to just watch what you do, not actually stop you, perhaps even help you if he thinks your plans, your goals, and your strength of character are good enough to provide a path forward for all the sentient people of the world. So unlike the rest of the Ascians, he acts more like a friend with different goals. And it's only when you presumably fail near the end of the expansion does he retract all this and decide, oh, you're worthless after all, I'm just going to go back to my original plans. So at the end of the expansion, Emet-Selch uses his powers to construct an elaborate recreation of the city of the ancient Ascians. And when I say elaborate, I'm not joking here. You basically suddenly step into Bioshock, which was completely unexpected. But you have to invade the city that he created out of magic to take him out, save the world, basically. So that ends the Shadowbringers expansion, the main expansion. In the post-expansion patches, after his defeat, his work is carried on by Elidibus. Elidibus is the final member of those 3 boss Ascians. The one who's basically like, oh, everybody else is dead now, I just have to like really bring it and get this done. So you end up fighting Elidibus in the final boss battle of patch 5.3. So before we go into the motifs here, I'm unfortunately going to spoil a little bit more about 5.3 story. So it turns out that the Ascians were originally the ancients. Thousands of years ago, they lived back before Hydaelyn, the god of light, Zodiark, the god of darkness. They were dealing with a big problem that they had to resolve by summoning Zodiark into existence. They basically created this god to solve this problem that was going to destroy their world. Another group of ancients decided they did not like this, and they summoned Hydaelyn, the god of light, in response, so that Hydaelyn could basically seal Zodiark. So as a result of that, the world was split into 14 different worlds. You, the player character, are exploring the game on the source world. The Shadowbringers expansion takes place on the first, which is basically an alternate reality version of the source world. You find out during patch 5.3 that you are a reincarnation of what was one of those ancients. The original 13 Ascians were part of a group called the Convocation of 14, who were basically rulers of the entire ancient world. And you were one of those 14 people. You were one of those rulers. All the Ascians that you've been fighting all game long were actually your friends back then. So at the end of 5.3, you have to fight Elidibus. He basically is like, you are ruining all my plans, and I don't care that you're a reincarnation of somebody I used to know. I don't even really remember you, so I'm just going to go ahead and kill you, because it is what it is. So in this epic boss battle, the song that plays is not Elidibus's theme, because he doesn't have a theme. The Ascians do have a theme, which we went over earlier, but it's not actually used here. Instead, the theme that we hear during this fight is a variation on Neath Dark Waters, which is the theme song of that ancient Ascian city that M itself recreated. So let's go ahead and listen to Neath Dark Waters real quick, just for the context.
Sure thing.
Gorgeous song. All right, so the use of this theme for the boss battle implies a connection to the Ancients world. While that is partially the case, that's not the primary reason why this motif is reused here. It's actually used to set up a ridiculously massive cameo and twist during that boss battle. So as we went over, you, the warrior of light, the player character, are actually a reincarnation of one of the ancients who were friends with the Ascians. You didn't like how the whole Zodiac thing went down, so your characters left the group entirely, and they were like, all right, we're just a convocation of 13 now, because we hated you so much for what you did that we don't even have 14 members anymore. But Emmett Selk was close enough to you back then that he secretly basically keeps a record of who you were. He doesn't want your memory to just vanish and for nobody to ever know who you were. So during this boss battle in 5.3 where you're fighting Elidibus, he teleports you, the player character, into the Rift Between Worlds, and you have no way to bring yourself back. So instead, what you do is you use a magic spell gifted to you before the battle, which is a spell that your original character used thousands of years ago. Your original character was the original Warrior of Light who went around and took care of just problems across the world. And you actually liked, instead of going back to the original ancient city to chat up the Competition 14 and be like, hey, can you guys give me a hand with this? You preferred getting the hand of all the people you meet as you travel the world. You're like, hey, I have something to take care of. There's like a big monster attack in this area. Can y'all locals help me out? And so you, as the Ancient Warrior of Light, made a lot of friends. So the Ancient Warrior of Light has a magic spell that allows them to teleport people that they need the help of directly to them in times of need. So this is a spell you get right before the Elidibus boss battle. And it is one you use, and you think that you're going to teleport, say, your NPC companions that you've been fighting with all game long. But no. So what happens here is you use that spell to reach into the live stream and yank the dead Emmett Selk's soul just out of the live stream, just so he can teleport the player character back to the battlefield, give a pithy wave, and just walk off and vanish into the ether. So this plot twist was so unexpected at the time that so many players just got immediately killed by the following battle mechanics, because they were just like, and they just couldn't pay attention to the mechanic that came immediately after that just one-shots the party if you don't use a tank limit break in time. Which meant we had to watch the entire sequence again, and not that anyone was complaining. That was an amazing sequence. But going back to the musical motifs, Neath Dark Waters is used here specifically to give you a hint, not that this battle will be associated with the City of the Ancients, but that this one particular ancient, who was your friend way back then, is going to pop in to give you a hand. And that's just a mind-blowing usage of the musical motifs in this story. And in my opinion, it just continues to show how amazing Masayoshi Soken and his entire composition team are at like weaving these musical motifs into the actual storytelling of the game. And it's like, if anybody tries to tell you that music cannot be used to help tell a story in a video game, well, they're obviously lying. And this game is one of many things that serve as proof. So I just talked about all that, but I didn't actually let you listen to the boss battle theme in question. So let's put that on real quick to end that segment.
Yeah, there's another one that's not on Spotify, but you have to go listen to it. I really love how you can hear more of this in the full song. Just a taste of it here, but in the guitar track, there's a ton of notes that they're just so crunchy that they almost sound like they're wrong, and it's very intentional, and it feeds into kind of the disorientation that you feel just at like every. Go listen to the song, though. It's so good. So
as a quick FYI, those Shadowbringers EPs, EP 1, 2, and 3, like the OST itself is not on Spotify, but those EPs are up for sale on basically Amazon, iTunes, all the major platforms as well.
So we're gonna wrap things up here and hopefully have some time for questions left over, which is actually looking pretty likely because we actually got through things pretty quickly. So the general points that we want to emphasize here are that Final Fantasy XIV is just awesome, man. It's the bee's knees. And the music is really great too. And again, there's lots of reasons. Like we agonized over how to like we wanted to talk about like 14 music. We love to do that. We're giant nerds. I work for a video game lead sheet website. JAREL works for a video game remixing website. That's what we like, right? But we just for the sake of getting things into an hour, we had to drill down on one particular aspect that we want to talk about. But there's lots and lots of different things that really should be examined about how good the music is. For example, just the use of like genres to like sell aesthetics. You had that jazz version of the ASEAN theme for an Art Deco dungeon. Like the list goes on, right? And I think one of the reasons that 14 players are so passionate, almost cult-like in their obsession with the game, is that they have all these deep connections to parts of the game, connections that are deep and earned. And I would posit that the music is a really fundamental reason for this. Like it's impossible to play that boss battle with from Stormblood that we alluded to earlier, and not get out of it and be like, whew, that was a lot. And it's kind of an assault on all the senses because, like, obviously, like I said, it's a really tough boss battle too. So you're just like panting, just trying to catch your composure, and then you've also got years of therapy to stack on top of it, right? So again, I think that a lot of the reason for this is that they use these recurring characters and these recurring ideas in a way that that is very earned and very obviously kind of a way to build long-term connections for the player. And I think that if nothing else happens as a result of this panel, we're really hoping that, like I said, I'm just some guy. JAREL is a very brilliant just some guy, but I'm just some guy. We're hoping that someone with a degree is watching this panel and takes this football and runs with it. And by the way, if speaking of people with degrees, I believe it's 7:00 today. Fact check me on that. The same Twitch channel, we got the Final Fantasy VII remake being discussed by a bunch of people with actual degrees. So definitely go check that out if this stuff interests you. 5:45
p.m. by the way, a little bit earlier. But yeah.
My bad. I should have referred to the schedule before saying that. 5:45 p.m. Definitely check it out. We'll try to publicize these slides somewhere so that you don't need to take a photo of this slide. But this is all the music that we talked about. If you have your Spotify app handy, go on and take a snap of that thingy on the left, or pop that that link on the right into your web browser, and it is a playlist that I put together with as many of the songs that I could get on Spotify, so you can hear them at your own leisure. Again, no Shadowbringers, Amazon, YouTube, etc., iTunes, and I believe that is all that we have for you all. We've got about 15 minutes left for questions. So hopefully someone's been gathering those for us.
I don't think anybody has, so I think we will just kind of sit here for a bit and see if any questions pop up in chat and just answer them in real time. So
yeah, let me get a web browser open because I had to like Kylo Ren my window situation here to be able to make this thing work.
Oh yeah, that's a good reminder. Thanks, Lantron. We have a Final Fantasy XIV Ether Data Center RP crawl happening tonight that Sigma is running. So if you play 14 and you're anywhere on the Ether Data Center, feel free to join us in that on the community events. That should be a lot of fun and possibly very, very weird. But you will enjoy either way, more than likely.
So I just hopped in chat real quick and saw the very first thing that I saw was thoughts on Weight of the World Prelude remix for the Nier Automata raid. We thought very hard about using that as one of the things that that we were going to talk about on the Prelude side. Yeah, I mean that is what I think is really great. So for those who are not in the know, a lot of the particularly the 24-player content in this game involves crossovers with other Square Enix properties. So the most recent one was Nier Automata, and they got Keiichi Okabe to do a version of the Nier Automata theme, Weight of the World, that's kind of done in the style of Final Fantasy XIV for one of the boss battles. And it's really great. Like it mixes in, I believe, the Prelude for sure. And if I remember right, I think it also gets the Warrior of Light theme in there. There's another like big 14 melody that they put in there in the middle of it, and it's just chef's kiss. It really sells the fact that the assertion, I don't really want to go into it too much because I don't understand Nier Automata's plot that well, but the assertion that they make is that it is canon, that the relation between 14 and Nier Automata is canon. And I can't think of a better way to sell that than to have the music say so, right? What do you have to say about that, Jarrell? Any additional thoughts?
You covered it. All I can really mention is just how much I was losing my mind when I first did that raid.
Yes.
That song is so good.
And then in the other raid, so there's two parts of it that are out now. They did the opposite thing where they did I might have actually said it backwards. Actually, I don't remember which one Keiichi Okabe did and which one Masayoshi Soken did. But one of them is literally the Realm Reborn boss theme. I think that's what it is. It's the Realm Reborn boss theme by Keiichi Okabe in the style of Nier Automata. And that was in Puppet's Bunker, right? Yeah. So you got the crossover going both ways, and it's chef's kiss. References to other FF games in the soundtrack.
Yeah, there's a lot of those. I will note that the vast majority of them feel like they're just straight. I won't say covers. They're obviously rearranged, but they're like the original song, just sort of in a rock style for a lot of those. Like pretty much anything that you hear at the Stormblood raids does not vary too much from the originals. The Final Fantasy II battle theme, I think it was 2 actually, that's the goofy one that you hear early on in some Realm Reborn Fates and in the Novice Network stuff. That one I like a lot because it's one of the more interesting variations. They actually take the Final Fantasy II battle theme and just make it like this jazzy upbeat thing while you are fighting a fate with a bunch of zombies, which is just a very weird combination. But yeah, so I mean, it is a Final Fantasy game. There are thousands of references to older Final Fantasy games all over the place, significant references. And so you often find you'll just run into like an older theme from an older Final Fantasy game just remixed and reused. And it's one of the things I love about it. Even if it's just like the original theme without too many changes other than just like more modern instrumentation, that's not like Super Nintendo synths, obviously. Still good tracks. Still amazing references when they tend to get used.
It really runs the gamut from like so there's a gold saucer. They pretty much use the gold saucer theme verbatim to there's a boss that's lightly inspired by Final Fantasy VI. So they take one of the boss themes from like one of the like really big boss battle themes from Final Fantasy VI and mix in some other references to other Final Fantasy VI themes in there. It's there you know there's a lot. The As a Slot motif seems to be used in a handful of themes, including Omega. What is that referring to? The Alliance? Yeah, so As a Slot being kind of Heaven's Word, spoilers by the way, being kind of this big research center of the Alligans, where they kind of figured out all the nonsense that they ended up doing that ruined the world. Yes, it does kind of get reused a lot in situations, particularly referring to ways in which the Alligans ruined the world. So Stormblood, spoiler coming up. Omega. When you
I
fight
think a lot of
Omega.
folks, yeah, that Omega sequence, a lot of folks really love the Oz's reference, which is basically the B part in good old Chicken Tenders.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to give you any context. 14 players fully understand what Chicken Tenders is.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, the Oz's theme is used there, and it's used very, very well.
Yep. Also, more Stormblood. Well, it's a Heaven's Word spoiler too. The big old monster that is locked in battle with Omega. There is a reference to the Azaslaw theme in that fight as well. And that's again kind of tying back into. I don't want to talk too much about that boss, but it is of dragon nature, and as you find out in the Binding Coil Bahamut series, the Allagans had a very not good relationship with the dragons. So
I do like the reference that's made there. Speaking of that particular dragon-related theme, is that it's reused as the standard flight theme for mounts when they're flying from Heaven's Word and on. And I didn't notice that initially it's reused specifically because the first time you're guaranteed to be able to fly in the game, before they added flight recently, you're flying on something that is very much related to that whole story plot-wise. So they wanted to keep the connections there, and that was a really good usage of the motif that kind of got overused over time, because literally every mount in the game that flies plays that song. So you're just like often Shadowbringers, and you're hearing that song, and you just have no relevance anymore. So slight downside to that sometimes, but it was still pretty amazing in its original usage.
We have this guy Landrum asks, am I crazy or do I hear answers in the beginning of tomorrow / the Shadowbringers theme? Maybe. I don't want to challenge you too much on that, but what I would say is what I would instead say is that what I hear is tomorrow obviously starts with that raised fifth interval, da 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 da, and lots of songs in the 14 pantheon involve that interval very prominently. And I almost want to say that that's kind of like a meta motif, is that like, you know, you have a raised fifth starting off a song. It's probably a 14 song, right? So this happens in Revolutions. It happens in the intro cutscene music for Heaven's Word. It's all over the place. So that's what jumps out to me. I don't want to say no. I just haven't really noticed that enough to comment on it, but it's something I definitely want to check out.
So I think Mezzo asked if y'all get a minute mind name dropping some of your favorite arrangements of 14 tunes, official or otherwise. I guess in terms of official stuff, pretty much you can't go wrong with like the entire Pulse album that just came out recently. You also can't go wrong with literally anything the Primals does. So the Primals, for context, is a band created by Final Fantasy XIV's main composer, Masayoshi Soken. He got together several other composers on the soundtrack, plus Koji Fox, who is like lead localizer and world lore builder. And they just made a band, and they just played rockin' versions of so many different 14 tracks, and pretty much anything you listen to by the Primals is fantastic, and often tends to come back into the game as like remix versions for, say, if they did a track of a dungeon theme, then the hard mode version of that dungeon that shows up in expansion later will probably use their track as the official song for that. In terms of unofficial arrangements, I would say just go look up Alex Bukala's YouTube channel and have fun. That's probably good life advice anyway. But yeah, there's a lot of great things to find there.
The one other thing that I'd call out is there are some really great rearrangements on the Journeys album, which was released, I think, shortly before Shadowbringers, if I'm not mistaken. It's kind of official live performances from the various fan fests of Stormblood, Heaven's Word music. It's all over YouTube. Definitely check it out. And they have another such album coming out in a few months called Scions and Sinners. No live performances but definitely some unique rearrangements and performances of some Shadowbringers favorites. So definitely check those out. I thought I saw one other question in there that I wanted to get to. Bought the newest album based off of the Twinning remix. Yes, that's a valid take.
Mhm.
It might have been lost in the scroll back, unfortunately. Yeah, I won't be able to find it. So yeah, is Fractal Continuum a good example? Good example of what? Good example of a bop? Yes.
Good example of motif use too, because it's Diaz's Law theme song redone. So it's a bop that primarily reuses that motif. It doesn't reuse it for anything like story wise. It's mostly just like a hey, here's this awesome theme song you just heard as you're exploring this area, and you can listen to it again in the dungeon while it's just making you nod your head.
Yeah, so Steel Hearts, I'd actually push back a little bit on that for that reason, because there is kind of an established kind of, I don't really know what word I want to use, but like it's just a thing that they do that like you have a dungeon in X region, dungeon Y in X region. Dungeon Y will have a remix of region X's theme in it, and that obviously that is still what motifs are, right? Like you're literally making a connection to like the geographic location of the dungeon by using its theme. We mostly didn't cover that one because since they do that so often all over the place, it almost felt like too much of a slam dunk for us to put in our panel. But I mean, it's totally a valid call. Fractal is a dungeon that used the Primals version for HM. Oh, yeah. I think that was definitely a Primals bop.
Yeah. I think we should probably go ahead and cut it off here. We've only got about 4 minutes left. So.
Yeah. So everybody, thank you so much for coming out. We'll drop some quick shout outs. Again, definitely check out 545, the Final Fantasy VII panel. Some dear friends of ours who are gonna blow your minds with actual smart talk, unlike what we offered here. Thank you so much to the VGM Together crew for helping us out. This was really easy for us to make happen, and we're honored to get the chance to talk about something that's so near and dear to our hearts. I almost feel silly saying that because I've been playing this game for like 7 months, and Arrow has been playing it for 7 years, so I know it's very dear to him as well. We really hope you enjoyed this. We really hope you give Final Fantasy XIV a shot if you haven't already. Definitely come hang out with us on Ether at 10 o'clock today. We're going to be hitting some bars and hopefully having a good time. And and happy VGM Together, everybody. We're really excited about this. We can't wait to see what's coming out next, and we hope you enjoy it as well.
Yeah, hope you all have a lot of fun watching all the amazing panels and concerts to come.